Welcome to Maitri, a safe space for women from entertainment to come together, celebrate their successes, and discuss solutions to overcome challenges. In the latest Maitri conversation, we talk about the very misunderstood but very needed female gaze. And since it is a Maitri conversation, it went beyond the brief and we chatted about much more. Without wasting another second, let us go across to the dynamic and talented women. Ananya Pandey, Kritika Kamrat, Tanuja Chandra, Faye D'Souza, Namrata Rao, Ishita Moitra, and Smriti Kiran.
Maitri!
Welcome to Maitri. In 1975, British film scholar Laura Mulvey wrote an essay about Hollywood and how things are constructed in Hollywood in terms of narratives and coined the term the male gaze. So that is the origin. The counter to the male gaze was the female gaze. And just to put it very simply, the female gaze is what puts women at the center of the narrative. Their motivations are not, driven by men. Their motivations are driven by their inner worlds. And they have a lot of agency, right? So you're thinking from the female perspective, and we want to discuss this today. I want to begin with you, Ananya. I was watching one of your interviews where you said that with Call Me Bae, which Ishita has created, which also, by the way, talks about female tribe and sisterhood. And there's a lovely term there called Behan Code, which I love. So Behan Code does a bunch of things. It does talk about female solidarity, which is lovely, and also antecedent to Bro Code, which exists and is prevalent. Ananya, you said that, when I started to do things like Call Me Bae, when that kind of material started to come my way, your Control's going to come out in October, Kho Gaye Hum Kahan, Gehraiyan. Now I've tasted blood. And now I cannot settle for less.
Yes.
So from the time that you began and today, what are your markers when you select a particular project? Like, how has that become different? What do you look out for?
I think I've become a lot more vocal about what I stand for, and I've realized that I can. Because when I started out, I didn't feel like I could have much of an opinion, and I don't know if I can completely say that's because I'm a woman or it's because I was very young also when I started out. I didn't know that I could contribute or I could say something. But when I did a film called Liger, actually, which I don't think anyone has watched, but when I did that, when I was doing that film, actually, there were things in that script that I didn't personally believe in, and they didn't align with the way that I thought. I felt like as a woman, I can't be okay with saying these things, and I can't be okay with, stuff like this coming out because it was against what I stood for. So that was actually the first time where I was like, listen, I'm not okay with saying this. Can we please change it? And they did change it, which I think is, that's good. And I felt like, okay, if I have the power to be able to do that, I'm going to do everything within my power and take on that responsibility to put out work there that aligns with my personal beliefs. And I feel what's a great thing about Call Me Bae is that there are women, there are girls, and they're talking to each other, but they're very rarely, or I don't think at all, talking about boys. Usually when they show girls, it's always like, oh, you like this boy, tell me about him, or they're fighting over a boy, or it's something to do with a boy. But in this show, there's not. I think there's maybe one conversation when the girls are talking to each other and it revolves around a boy. Otherwise, it's about, hustling and kind of, being allies for each other. And I thought that was really lovely. And I think now, I can't speak entirely for all of the work that's being done, in Indian cinema, but the kind of work that some of us are trying to do, we're getting a lot more depth. I think we're portraying real women on screen. We're trying to show them in their best, most flawed, but most real and honest way possible. And that's the best that I can do. Even when it came to Kho Gaye Hum Kahan, I'm like, I'm a girl like that. And I know girls like that. She's not claiming to be perfect or waking up already or, she has her problems and she's talking about them. And seeing stuff like that on screen, I don't think people even realize how comforting that can be. Growing up when I saw Konkana in Luck by Chance or I saw her in Wake Up Sid, I was like, okay, that's a real girl. She's not perfect, but that makes her perfect, And if I'm able to do that with my work, give, young boys or young girls out there any sort of solace by being like, okay, we feel comfortable or we feel comfortable in our skin, with seeing her characters or that performance, then for me, that's a success. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
So have the markers changed a little bit now then when scripts come to you, material comes to you?
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more responsible because I think when I started out, I just wanted to be an actress, since I was a kid. That's been my biggest dream. So I don't think I was thinking, I wasn't even aware how much one word that I said in a movie could impact things, doing one song, how that can, objectify women. I was not aware of these things. And, the more I'm getting older, the more I'm reading, the more I'm informing myself and just learning from people around me, the more I'm understanding that it does have an impact. And not just today, but it can have an impact even generations down. So if you can stand for something, then you should.
Ishita, Kritika, both of you don't belong to families that have anything to do with, the movies. In the time that you've spent in the industry, you very slowly and steadily built a formidable career. I want to know from both of you, what do you think has changed from the time that you began in the writing room, how you're treated and the kind of material that comes to you? Like in those terms, what are the changes that have come about?
So, I think it's like the Maslow's pyramid, right? In the beginning, it is about taking care of the basic needs and you have rent to pay. And you also, I'm not from a film family at all. My parents didn't understand what I wanted to do. Wo bhi writer banna hai, kya hai? And there were such few examples of women writers. There was Shibani Bhattija, there was Hani Irani. There were like very, very few women. So I couldn't even tell them, dekho, sab kar rahe hain. At that time, it was difficult for them to wrap their brains around this thing that I wanted to do and move to Bombay for. So your first opportunities choose you, you don't choose them. So it is actually about, in the beginning, just making sure that you're stable and you're earning, and once all those needs are met, then you can slowly start to assert yourself and also find your voice, which is always there, but it was stifled in the beginning. And so I think the past few years, ever since I'd say Four More Shots Please and Shakuntala Devi and Rocky Aur Rani and now Call Me Bae and The Test Case,
yes,
I've been able to write the kind of women that I really know and love and don't love also. But the idea is to be able to do this differently. So when I first moved here, like I said, there were very few women who were doing this. But I have literally seen the change in front of my eyes. And now there are so many. It's like a dam has burst. There are so many women writers. And now, there are writers' rooms where there are just women. There's one show that I'm doing there where all of us are 3 women. And it's not about, for me, when I'm choosing writers in my team, for Call Me Bae, there's Samina and Rohit. It's not about the gender. It is about the gender politics that they bring to the table. So, and I feel like even the younger generation of men, they also think differently. And I've literally seen this change happen. And I know that you can see it now on screen. And a lot more of it will be seen on screen in the next decade.
Lovely. Kritika?
I started my journey with television. So, for the longest time, I think I should have quit TV many years before I actually quit television. And it was because of what Ishita was saying, that I had to be financially independent and stable, and then I could take the risk of sitting at home and looking for the things that I want to do. Because before that, the work was choosing me. I didn't have the luxury to choose work. But the biggest change has been in the opportunities that are now coming my way. And just watching women characters on screen. As we know on television, it's very, it's always centered around a woman. It's aimed at a female audience, but the kind of parts that you have are, the ideal bahu or the saas or the dynamics between the saas and bahu. And there's nothing wrong with being the ideal beti or the bahu, but sometimes that is all that your character is. So I disagreed with that very early on, and I kind of never really found my representation on screen even. Like there weren't too many working women also on screen. And so I tried looking for those roles on TV, reached a dead end and wanted to kind of branch out. But even on cinema at that time, I think most women characters were like catalysts or in a more passive role in stories where they were either the moral compass or the object of desire or somebody who's helping the man grow. So what's happened is that with OTT, with web, this is where I've seen a big change in my career specifically. I think the characters that I'm getting to play now, and like Ananya was saying, they're flawed. That's why they're interesting. There is a space for flawed female characters also, and diverse characters, stuff that you didn't really see. I've played a gangster, and
So good.
and-
So good, delicious.
I was just like, I never thought I'd get to play a part like that. So this is possible because the writing has changed. Because people are,
And
writing
platforms are
female
commissioning
characters.
Such shows.
Yeah.
Platforms are commissioning these sort of shows.
And the audiences are accepting. That's
Correct.
why we can make a show like Hush Hush and, and not care about whether a man is leading the show or not.
Yeah, so when I started out, you could, like you said, I could count female directors on one hand. There were just too few. So the number's grown, but by no measure as much as it should have. It's not even, I mean, for me, till half the directors aren't female, writers aren't female, actors, well, actors of course there are, but DPs, editors, everybody are not, when it's half are not female, it's not fair, it's still unfair. And
You know, what I also love is that a lot has to do with how things are framed and what the narratives are and what the constructs are, which have been, which exist in society. And the language has started to change, the way you frame things has started to change. And one of the things that I loved was what Tanuja did with Wedding.com. Because any material that helps me check my own biases is just so precious, because she could have looked at those women in any way possible, but she actually turned the narrative on its head and framed them as victims of a crime as opposed to fools. Tanu, I really want to know two things, which is how did you arrive at that lens? And was it easy for you to, because things like that become boring for people. Was it easy for you to push through and say that, this is what I want to say and this is how I want these women to be framed?
none of it has been easy. But my love story with the female genre is right from the start of my career. It's been there right from the first work I've done. And it's something that it's only grown in me, the love for that. And my insistence on wanting to do only that. And I keep doing that. So with Wedding.com, it was very clear. Here were women that whose hands I was holding. And I was standing with them. So they were not women who, for me, I was asked this, that people are going to say, how could she be so foolish? How could she believe him? Couldn't she see that she's educated? Couldn't she see that he was lying, I said, no, she couldn't see, and how would you have done it differently? We don't know, I'm there to say that all of us are, when we fall in love, we think that this is a future that, by the way, has been prescribed for us. And we must find a partner, we must marry. When we do, and it's somebody who's a fraud, the entire blame rests on the shoulder of the person who's a victim. How unfair is that? So I was very sure that I was standing right by them and saying that there is not one wrong thing they did, not one. It is, and we shouldn't even be asking this question.
Yeah.
We should be saying that how could that guy do this to them?
Yes.
Instead of saying that you defend yourself, how could you make this mistake? So I was very clear that this is not going to happen, and I'm really happy that that piece of their broken hearts that they shared has touched people, has touched viewers, because I do feel that this is also a thing of the male gaze, which is that, the strong woman does not get her heart broken. The strong woman doesn't cry. The strong woman is always, able to collect herself. I think we should share when we've failed, when we've been alone and when we've not known what to do. So I do think that the entire exercise of, that one has to consciously, mindfully make change happen. It will not happen on its own, and I don't think the glass ceiling has been created by women. Therefore, the onus also belongs on the shoulders of men. And I've been told very straight to my face that औरतों की पिक्चरें नहीं चलती. You know?
Amazing.
आप बनाइए तो पहले, फिर देखेंगे ना चलती है कि नहीं चलती है.
Namrata, who is a national award-winning editor, and we were talking about numbers. So every time a woman decides to direct, I just do yay. And she has just directed her first docu-series, Angry Young Men.
Loved it.
Fabulous. Thank you.
It is so incredible that a writing duo, a male writing duo with swag, who were the bad boys who came in and dictated their own terms. They were super successful. Namrata decided to tell this story. And there is such tenderness with which she has talked about them. But Namrata, it's really weird because you did came in for a little bit of heat. I mean, people have really appreciated the docu-series. But I think a lot of people felt that it should have been framed in a certain way. There's not enough machismo in there, and it should have been like that. But what did you feel? Like, how did you approach that? Was it a conscious choice to kind of do it this way?
What happened while shooting was very organic because when I met them, they were already very old. You know, so I wanted to see them as the people they are, the human beings they are, rather than create some narrative which is more audience friendly. I don't know, you know. So I went with what I intuitively felt, which was about their dignity, which was about their wit. They're funny people, you know. So I thought, okay, I'll just capture that and not force things for camera. Also, maybe it's my film school training that you have to let things be and not try to impose yourself. Though, of course, I mean, your personality comes out because I think I'm not a very aggressive person myself. And maybe it's in my casting. Like, you know, when my producer cast me as the director, she knew it. So it is a more human lens. And that's what I wanted to go with. And of course, I mean, now that I'm reading, there are many things I could have done differently. And I will do it differently. But I'm not taking it personally. It's fine. I mean, it felt organic. It felt natural. So I went with it.
And it is the female gaze. You know, it
think
is
so.
a very empathetic look at who these two people are and what makes their stories resonate.
But I have to say that Namrata, I must admire Namrata for being so wise in accepting criticism. Because I still haven't gotten used to it.
Oh, it's a very selfish thing. You know, I think it's really helped me as an editor also because everybody has opinions. And whenever even you show a rough cut, there are so many opinions, right? So I always listen to everything. And then I think, okay, what is it that I can use and not? So it's a very selfish thing, I would say.
That's a special skill. That's a skill to develop.
But it really helps. I mean, it's helped a lot of my work. But you know what was interesting? One thing I would like to add about Angry Young Men is that the producer, my active producers were women. My executive producer was a woman. I'm a woman. My editor was a woman. My assistants were women. There were so
Your
many
cinematographer,
people.
Shreya shot it.
Yeah, she shot one schedule, so partly, and she was a woman. So there were a lot of women on set. And initially, when we were starting off, everybody was asking that, isn't it too much estrogen? And, you know, I was like, हाँ, ठीक है, testosterone होता है, ये भी ठीक है, मतलब, ये भी देख लेते हैं, वो तो देखा हुआ है.
So ridiculous.
They did a show called Angry Young Men.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool.
Without a lot of testosterone, right?
Made by cool young women.
No, but after a point, you forget about it. After a point, it's about getting things done. ये क्यों नहीं हुआ, ये क्यों time पे नहीं हुआ, and what is going on. And, you know, you forget that it's, you know, whether it's men or women. And I think that was fab.
One of the biggest things that has happened, which is positive, which has given us a shot in the arm, is the Women in Cinema Collective that is in the Malayalam film industry that was formed in 2017. It predates the Me Too movement. These are all extremely successful women who have thriving careers, who got together and made sure that the government formed a committee to investigate what is happening in the industry. This report is called the Hema Committee Report. And it's an evolving story. And I'm just so happy that has happened because it's given you a template of the kind of things and the kind of oppression and exploitation that women in the industry face. And it's not industry specific. This is all across the board. It's just that in the Malayalam film industry, they've managed to protest and get a report like this out. And Faye has been covering it
Yes.
copiously. And I'm so happy that she is and, spreading the word. Faye, what's it been like for you?
Well, I think that from any other industry, what we have experienced is we've seen the Me Too movement, and a lot of times it just fizzled out because there was no legal process backing it, and it didn't really lead to any structural systemic changes. There was nothing new brought into contracts or the way the business was done to make sure that things changed in the future. What we were left with was just a lot of gossip. I think the difference with the Hema Committee report is that this is a proper legal document that the government of Kerala, from what we understand, and hopefully will use as a basis to create regulation to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. And that's really important. I think what I'm hoping for is that things will change structurally in the entertainment business, on sets, in contracts, on location, in the way in business is being done. One person actually suggested that we should put in a certain list of things that have to be done, and your final certification for release should be based on the fact that these things were done on your set.
Absolutely.
Like actually institutionalize the change. And that is then we'll have a structure that can be demanded and followed by other people in other industries, saying that it's happening in Kerala, why can't it happen here? Why can't we? And it's, I think that real systemic change will change when it's not just for the lead actors who are on stage, who are on screen, the junior artists, the makeup artists, the people doing hair, the people actually working on set. It should change for everyone.
I wanted to ask all of you, and I think this would be a good marker for anyone who's watching this discussion, that what can men do to be allies?
I think listen without judgment and not jump to give advice and say that this is how you should feel or be or think. Yeah. And just accept without putting yourself into that spot. Because you can't be, just like I can never be a man, you can never be a woman. So
Yeah, sometimes they mean well. They really wanted to solve the problem. But instead, if they could listen and hold space for women to just
solve their own problems.
Yeah, express. And I think mostly we do tide over and feel
one
better.
One step further, believe us.
Yeah.
Believe us when we're telling you this is uncomfortable. Believe us when we're telling you this is wrong. Believe us when we're telling you this is not okay. A lot of times, a lot of the men who are very strong allies will choose instead to rationalize. Yeah. And say, no, but if you think about it, but why would you say that? But believe us, because that discomfort, that instinct is real. So, and that's across the board. So people at home, people at work, people you're sharing space with, if someone is uncomfortable, listen and pay heed. It's important.
Yeah, and it's not, as they say, it's not all men, but it is just men, at the end of the day. So, yeah, listening is important, acknowledging is important. And as Faye said in the same video, she was like, don't say we are like your mother and your sister and your daughter. Treat us as an equal. Give us that respect. You don't have to make it about someone close to you or some woman in your life. You don't have to do that.
It's so interesting that you brought this up in this conversation, because I think it stems from the film culture, which is that there are two types of women, right? There is the mother, the wife, the good girl, and there is the vamp. And there is only this category of women who deserve protection. And the other category is asking for it. And so there's this whole idea of, tu meri beti jaisi ho, tu meri maa jaisi ho, tu meri matlab, that's only these people I will protect. So you have to in some way qualify and prove to me your goodness. And that, it's all garbage. Because we're equal. And just like you will walk out onto the street after the shoot is over and be completely free and confident, we should also be able to do that. It should literally be an equal playing field, and then we can compete as equals. Until then, it's not fair.
yeah.
So I wanted to add to what Ananya was saying. I was recently on a flight and there was this guy who was like being very nasty, and he was just, putting his seat back, and I was telling him ki thoda aage kar lijiye. 2-3 baar maine bahut hi politely bola, and then I said, my baby is going to sleep on my lap. So suddenly he just turned around and he said, I didn't know aap mother hai. I'm so sorry. So I can only be respected.
That's
It's like, I mean, this is basically the conditioning that we are talking about.
Yeah.
You know, जब मैं माँ बन जाती हूँ तो मैं I'm a respectable
only
woman.
qualify if you contribute
Otherwise,
to society by bearing children.
So I want to add something personal. I think how
Please
men can
do.
be allies is by sharing the load. And I feel like in my family, for example, there's equal parenting. And the reason that I can go out and do everything is because there is nothing that I would do for my child that my husband wouldn't do. And I think I also had like these worries before I had my baby कि कैसे होगा इसके बाद में. But I mean, it really, apart from when I was feeding her, it really didn't change anything for me professionally. And that is because I actually have an ally who is sharing the load at home. And I think that is very, very important.
Important.
No, and I mean, in terms of, I would say that ask what is needed of me. I mean, I'm sure your husband did, and that's important. That, you know, how can I help? What can I do? What is it that I can do to contribute to your life? You know, it's always expected from women. You know, why is it not the duty of men to do that as well? So I think that. You know, there's actually it's long road ahead of what men can do. There's too much.
And I think only men can do this, is call out sexism and objectification and vulgar jokes in men-only spaces.
Correct.
Yes. Oh my
That's
God.
something we can't do. And,
Yeah.
you know, so that locker room talk, that friendly banter over, you know, when only boys are chilling, just how they look at women on screen, off screen, or whatever, how their friends are, you know, there's a very thin line between complimenting and objectifying. And if they're able to call out
other men without
other
feeling
men,
like
yes,
yeah.
and their friends and
Yeah.
people close to them, then that would really help.
Men can really be very strong allies if they call out bullying. Like, for example, if there's a group and where one girl says, I don't want to drink tonight, I don't feel like drinking, and everybody's like, Arey, pee le yaar, tu kya? You know, just step in and say, hey, she's uncomfortable. Back off.
let
It's
it be,
fine.
yeah.
Just that little, and you know, you automatically feel a little more powerful when someone stands with you.
But you know, I want to say that, you know, which basically means that all of us, including the men, have to be prepared to be unpopular. Be
Yeah.
okay with being a
And
little
feminists.
unpopular.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
I feel like we need to reclaim that as well. Somehow people are apologetic now to say that I'm a feminist because you're going to be hated on.
because you don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
because you don't
I
understand.
think so.
Exactly, that's
Like,
my
educate
point.
yourself.
No, I was sitting with somebody and this was a conversation on camera where she said that I'm not a feminist, I believe in equality.
I know who you're
So that
talking
means-
about.
No, not what you think it is. This was somebody else. You don't know. Recently.
Recently.
And I don't know where, but I feel like a lot of people like to give that disclaimer that I'm not a feminist.
Without knowing what a feminist
Yeah, I don't know why. So
Because
we feel
I
like
think it's somewhere become like a troublemaker. Like if you're a feminist, you'll be a troublemaker.
But if you discredit feminism, there's no way we're going to be able to band together. What are you going to call it?
Okay, you're all examples of finding a way. I have to say, with all the challenges, all of you found your way. You figured out. None of you have surrendered to the status quo. The very fact that you're thriving and have a career and stupendous success is a testament to your spirit. What has kept you going, and what kind of support structure have you built around yourself to navigate your workspaces?
I think my drive has kept me going because I came to the city with a certain agenda. And I think even in the failures and even when things weren't what I thought they would be, I just knew in my heart that if I keep working hard, something, you know, एक दरवाजे से दूसरा दरवाजा खुल जाएगा and you'll reach the room where you want to be eventually. And yeah, finding allies and marrying them helped me.
Yeah, I mean, I married an ally, and I think it's really important. The choice of spouse becomes a really important professional decision, apart from being a personal decision. A really strong network of girlfriends
Yeah.
who will tell you that it's okay, it's normal, or it's not normal, you need to do something about it, or, you know, who'll just pep you up and just places you can sort of plug in for strength and for solace when you need to. The Behan Code, the sisterhood is really important. I have excellent colleagues who have carried me through, you know, my periods of, my maternity leave, and when I was not around as much as I should be, who sort of held it all up for me when I was cranky and not a great person to be around, who sort of held it together. I think that is so important. The people around you are so important, and each of us needs that family.
Yeah. My biggest support system is my parents, and I'm so glad they brought me up exactly the way they brought up my brother. And that way I have the privilege of, I've seen that equality and that treatment at home, so I don't settle for less. And I can easily identify when I'm not being treated equally. That has really helped me, be able to stand up for myself.
Nanya?
I think for me, what keeps me going is seeing change, knowing that, speaking up or even through cinema in any way you can actually make an impact. Just seeing that like a ripple effect almost happen around you, and not even around you, even if one young girl comes up to me and says, oh, I am myself because you are yourself and I feel comfortable in my skin, then for me that's I've done my job. So I think seeing change is a huge reason why I keep going. And in terms of building a support system, I think just having examples around me, seeing, the women in my family always work and fight to work. My grandmother, my dadi worked until she was 84, until she passed away. And for me, that's an inspiration. She did what she loved and she fought for her place in this world. So actually creating that example and being that example, even when it comes to my contemporaries, they keep pitting women against each other and actresses against actresses. But with Sara and Janhvi, I think it's not a very conscious attempt, but we constantly try to be there for each other and support each other very publicly so that we're showing people that this is what it's supposed to be like. Don't believe any other way. This is how female friendships are supposed to be.
Ananya, one thing I want to ask you is that when you're in the position that you're in, right? Is there, everyone does try and kind of not say no and say all the right things, but has there been something that has made you feel uncomfortable, ever?
Yeah. That's why I said, every girl has been in an uncomfortable situation, and I feel like sometimes you're so scared yourself to identify it. I feel like when it's happened to me, I'm like, oh, no, I'm probably just imagining it, or it's in my head, and they probably didn't mean it that way. But then when you talk to your friends about it, you're like, no, actually, that wasn't okay. And the more you speak about it and the more you call it out. So I think just being there for someone to just listen and be like, no, that wasn't right. When you talk about teaching people bad touch and good touch, these things have to be taught. This has to be a part of our education system. I don't understand why this isn't taught in school. It has to start from a very grassroots level. This has to be part of education. You teach your daughters, this is not the way you're supposed to be touched, but why aren't you teaching the boys not to do that, So it has to be taught. It's a thing that only the more you speak about it, the lighter the load gets and the easier it gets. Yeah.
Other than just digging your heels in, another thing that is important is to have the confidence to leave things, to leave marriages, jobs, toxic friendships, if they're not working for you and they're not, prepping you up.
Tanuja, any last?
Being born to allies, that was, I didn't have a choice in that, but it has absolutely transformed and made my life what it is. I also do have a very niggling sense of justice that I want to see in the world, and it just bothers me too much, so I can't let go of that. So I think that's kept me going. Women, of course, because they're a highly oppressed community, but of all other kinds of oppression as well across the world. It bothers me a great deal. So, I think that keeps me going. The need to maybe make a mark and do something about bringing a modicum of justice into the world.
I just want to thank all of you for coming here. I think we've just scratched the surface. Thank you for what you do. You're incredible. And thank you for joining me for this chat.
Thank you for what you do.
So much fun.
I know. We're incredible.
Thank you.